Prabhupada Paramahansa Parivrajaka Sutara Satasma Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai, Antakoti Vaishnavinda ki jai, Ramacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem se kaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinda ki jai, Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakund Radha Kund Girigabadhan ki jai, Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadviv Dham ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, Gaur Pramanande Hari Hari. Vishaya Vinivattante Niraharasya Dehina Rasavajjang Rasopi Asya Parang Drishtya Nivattate. Those who are Sanskrit students may recite this important. Vishaya Vinivattante Niraharasya Dehina Rasavajjang Rasopasya Parang Drishtva Nivattate. Jatato Yapi Kaunteya Purusasya Vipastitaha Indriyani Pramathini Haranthi Prasabang Manaha Vani Sarvani Sangyamya Jukta Asita Matpara Vasehi Yasya Indriyani Tasya Prajna Pratisthita. Vishaya Vinivattante Niraharasya Dehina Rasavajjang Rasopi Yasya Parang Drishtya Nivattate. This verse we were discussing last Friday. The subject matter is that we are trying to transfer our activities from the material platform to the spiritual platform. That is the whole idea. Now, material platform, as I have already explained to you several times, material platform means Vishaya. Vishaya means four things. Ahar, Nidra, Bhai, Maithun. Eating, sleeping, and defending and mating. These are called Vishaya. The materialistic way of life means these four things: eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Sense gratification. But if we want to go to the spiritual platform, then these bodily demands, at least for the present, we have to regulate. We cannot enjoy material life without any restriction, and at the same time we can stand on the spiritual platform. That is the whole thing. The typical problem is there. We want to be spiritualists by speculation only. That is the whole tendency. People are much interested in philosophical speculation without any practical life. In the modern world, it is said, Jasothe dharmajajanam. This is the symptom of this age. Jaso arthe. I want to associate with some organization, spiritual, just for the sake of name. Oh, I am attached to that such big organization. But so far my life is concerned, it is as it is. As it is. I have seen that, I don't wish to name that particular, in some yoga institute, I have seen the members, they come, they hear, and they are hearing and coming for the last 10 years. But unfortunately, they have not learnt even the preliminary instruction of yoga. Yoga, the whole process of yoga means indriya samyama, controlling the senses. Controlling the senses. But I have seen they have no control over senses. This whole yoga process means the controlling the senses, nothing more. The Hatha Yoga means by different practice of asana, posture, or sitting posture, or breathing posture, all these means concentrating myself, focusing my attention to the super soul. And because our mind is disturbed, because our mind is distributed in so many engagements, therefore the yogic process is a mechanical process by which we can drag the mind from outside engagement to inner side and focus the same for perceiving or for realizing the super soul. So, in the preliminary stage, that one is required to control the senses. Uncontrolled sense will drag me to the material plane. Adant gobhi visatang tamisram punachar vitacharvananam. There is a very nice verse in Bhagavata. Matinna Krishne parato sato ba mitho vipaddita grihabhritanam adantago bhi visatang tamisam punachar vitacharvananam. The purpose is that those who are uncontrolled of their senses and those whose mind is fixed up only for this material enjoyment, they cannot enter into the sphere of spiritual life. Mati na Krishna, this Krishna philosophy, Krishna consciousness. Mati means attention. The attention to Krishna consciousness, Matinna Krishna, parato satoba. Even by hearing instruction from learned, transcendentalists, or by self-study. Parato means taking lessons or taking instruction from others. And sato means by self-culture. Matinna Krishna parato satova mithoba by assembly. By assembly. No, it will never be. Matinna Krishna parato satova mitho vipaddita grihabhritana. Grihabhritana means, griha means house, and brata means bhav. One who has made his bhav that this worldly life, eat, drink, be merry and enjoy. This is all in all. For them, there is no question of spiritual life. We have to decide it. that spiritual life and material life, they are different angles of vision. If we give more stress to the material life, material way of life, then it is not possible to have any spiritual realization or spiritual emancipation. Those things. Because the whole idea is, as we are discussing for several weeks, that I am spirit, pure consciousness. I have been put to this material contact somehow or other, without tracing the history and how I have put into. But the fact is that I am put into this material circumstances, and therefore, due to my material condition of life, I am undergoing miseries, so many miseries. So the whole idea is that I have to get out of this material contact and reinstate myself in the pure spiritual life, so that I shall be free from all misery. Because spirit soul as it is, in its pure form, it is Satchidananda. It is eternal, it is blissful, and it is full of knowledge. So the whole program is there. So Vishaya Vinimartana is still even the yoga system by mechanical process, concentrating the mind and dragging the mind from other engagement, that is also forceful. That is also forceful. Because by some artificial means, because first thing is that I am not this body. Still, I am trying to control my senses by some bodily activities. Therefore, it is some or other, it is artificial. And as I last day, I cited one example that a great yogi, just like Vishwamitra, he practiced yoga and he rose to the highest platform, but still he failed to control his senses. He came in contact with Menaka, a society woman of the heaven, and Sakuntala was born. So, here Bhagavad Gita says that Vishaya Vinivartante Nirahara Sudena. There are some rules and regulations for drying up our sensual activities, artificial drying up. Just like you are not to eat more than once. You are not to do this, you are not to do this. So many negative thoughts. Just like a diseased fellow. A diseased fellow is advised by the physician to refrain from so many things. Similarly, there are rules and regulations for controlling the mind, for restraining the senses. There are so many rules and regulations. But still, those regulations, those restrictive regulations may also fail. There are so many instances. But here, the process which is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita, dovetailing your consciousness with the Supreme Consciousness, that is the highest. That is the highest. Raso vajjang rasopi yassa parang drishta nivartate. Parang drishta, in other processes, you have to, I am giving some practical example. Just like in the yogic process, there is strict regulation that you cannot eat this, you cannot eat this, you shall have to eat like this, you shall have to sit like this, you have to breathe like this, so many restrictions. But if you dovetail your consciousness with the Supreme Consciousness. So, in spite of, without being restriction, you will not like the restricted things. Rasovajjang rasopiyasya parangdishtani. You will dislike those restricted things. One process is that by force I am asking you, do not do this. But another process is that you have become so much elevated that you do not like to do this yourself. Just like the other day I cited the example of Jamunacharya. Jamunacharya says that so since I have adopted my consciousness, the Supreme Consciousness of Krishna, Jadavadi mama chitta Krishna padara vinde, so long my consciousness has been fixed up in the transcendental service of Krishna. Tadavadi, since that, even if I think of sex life, it becomes, my face becomes turned, and I wish to fight on it. So why? That one thing is that one process is applying that you should restrict from this. The another process is that without even restriction, you do not like to do it. So this process is so perfect. Krishna says that rasopi, even if you have that desire, so you do not like to use it. Although you have got the privilege, but you are at liberty, but you do not like to do it. Rasopi asa rasovajjang rasopi asa. Although he has all the full capacity, not that he has become important or he has no capacity for such life, in spite of his having all strength and all capacity, still he does not like. Oh, this is what? That stage comes. Rasovajjang rasopi is parangdisha. Why? He has got some superior things, superior sex life in which he wants to engage himself. So this process is so perfect. The other process of restraining the senses from enjoyment, that is forced, but that forceful enjoyment may not stand. It may fail sometimes. But this process, having adopted oneself in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord, one becomes completely detached from all these vishaya. Vishaya means eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Jatato jhapi kaunteya purushasya vipasthitaha indriyani pramathani aranti prasabhang mana. Our mind is so strong and so uncontrolled that even though we artificially try to control our senses, still sometimes at a certain period we fail, just like Vishwamitra Muni failed. Jatatopi kaunteya purushasya vipassita. Vipassita means a very learned man, and still trying. Not ordinary man, but learned man, trying to control his senses. Jatatopi kaunteya purushasya vipassita. Indriyani pravai. But the senses are so strong that at certain point it fails, even by the attempt of a very learned scholar who knows everything. Therefore, in social engagement, according to Vedic injunction, especially for the brahmacharis, not only brahmacharis, brahmachari means student life, and other three orders of life means vanaprastha, retired life, and sannyas life. these three orders of life are restricted from associating with women. Only householders, those who are married, they are simply allowed to associate with women. And others, just like the brahmachari, the vanaprastha, the sannyas, they are strictly restricted from association of women. And that stricture is said like this: matra sasra duhitrava navivikta sane vaset balavan indriya grama viddangsa vitarsati. The restriction is given so strictly that one should not sit in a solitary place, even with his mother, with his sister, with his daughter. Why? Now, balavan indriya grama viddangsa vitarsati. The senses are so strong that it may go wrong, even though he is a learned man. Here also the same thing is stated. The vipaschita, even one is learned man, he is trying to restrict jatakopi, kauntya. Indriyani pramathani. Pramathani means these senses are so mad that it may go out of my control. So, the whole idea is that if we want to be spiritually advanced, then we have to minimize our materialistic way of life. Two things cannot go. If we want really a spiritual advancement of life, then unrestricted materialistic way of life cannot go. Under regulation, under restriction, under rules, we have to, because so long we have this body, we have to satisfy the material needs. It is not that I shall not eat, or I shall not sleep, or I shall not defend, or I shall not mate. No, there is allowed. It is allowed. But with a view that I will have to retire from all these things, these material needs. That is the point of view. Now, that can be very easily attained if we engage our senses or engage our consciousness. When I engage my consciousness into the transcendental, loving service of the Supreme Consciousness, these things automatically take place. So that even there is, I will say, there is a, I would say, cause of my falling, still I shall not fall down. Even there is enticement, still I shall not fall. Because parang drishta, I have seen something which is far, far better enjoyment than this material enjoyment. So we have to come to that point. And what is that point? Tani sarvani sanjamma juktva asita mapparaha. The Lord said, therefore, you can control your senses. Sarvani. There are so many senses. You can control your senses. Juktva asita mappara. When you engage the senses in relation with my service or unto me. Therefore, in the devotional service, the beginning is the archan. The archan is the process which gives engagement to all the senses, just like eye, ear, and tongue, and nose, hands, legs, and so many we have got senses, and each department has got his engagement. For example, just like we are engaging our tongue and ear in the transcendental sound of Hare Krishna. This engagement, we want to hear good music melodious music. But if we engage our ears for hearing melodious music in relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna, just like Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare. There are many glories, not only in Sanskrit language, in other languages, the glories of Lord. If we try to hear glories of the Lord with the ear, then my ear may not be engaged in other songs. Parang Drishtani Vartat. Similarly, my tongue, if I determine that I shall eat only foodstuff which is offered to Krishna, then naturally my eating problem becomes restricted. And as I go on eating the foodstuff which is offered first to Krishna and then I take, then the natural effect will be that my tongue will be controlled. And if I want to control my other senses, then the tongue control is the first business. Because if we cannot control the tongue, then other senses is impossible to be controlled. Therefore, when we take our foodstuff, we sing this nice song, Sharira avidya jal jarendriya taheka. This body is a network of nescience. Sharira avidya jal jarendriya tahekal. And the material senses, they are just like kal. Kal means venomous serpents. The Sharira avidya jal jarendriya tahekal, tar madhye jivhavati lobhamaya sudurmati. Amongst all the senses, the tongue is very avaricious, you see. It wants so many palatable dishes now and then, and tar madhye jivhavati lobhamaya sudurmati. And it is very difficult to control. Now, Krishna Baladama, so Lord Krishna is so kind that in order to control my tongue first, he has given me so many nice foodstuffs, so that if I eat them, then my tongue will be controlled. So, the whole thing is, Tani Sarvani Sanjama Jukta Asita Matpa. We should always remember that to attain to the spiritual life, it is a great penance. It is a great penance. But although it is very difficult, perhaps you know that in the Puranas, in the Vedic literature, we have got information that there are sages who underwent penance for so many years. Why? In the history of the Puranas, you can see from the examples of Lord Buddha, Lord Jesus Christ, Lord Chaitanya, Shankaracharya, who are recently within the limit of our historical knowledge, they attained spiritual perfection after undergoing penances for many years. So spiritual perfection is not very easy thing, that simply by attending in either of the so many groups and hearing something nice lectures from a person. No, it is practical. It is practical. If we are actually serious about attaining, so we must be in a spirit of sacrifice. In this age, by the grace of Lord Chaitanya, the matter has been simplified. Matter has been simplified. What is that? He prescribed that Harennama, Harennama, Harennama iva kevalam kalau nastiva nastiva gatirunati. Simply by chanting the holy name of God, Either this Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, or any name of God in any language, that doesn't matter. But this is recommended because Lord Chaitanya himself chanted this holy name, therefore it is better recommended. But it doesn't matter that if you think, oh, this holy name was chanted by the Hindus, so I used to chant in my own way. That is also recommended. But how the matter has been simplified, that for attainment of spiritual life, people had to undergo so many years under penance and regulation, and here is only thing is that you simply chant the holy name of the Lord. Then everything will come to you automatically by and by. Because in this age, penance is not at all possible. Nobody can undergo any penance. But without penance, without sacrifice, from history, from books, from scripture, we understand nobody has attained spiritual perfection. So we require to undergo some sort of penance. That penance is that engage our senses not in the process of sense gratification, but in the process of serving the Supreme Lord, dovetailing our independence, our consciousness to the Supreme Consciousness. Just like the example, Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is very nice example that he dovetailed his consciousness with Krishna. He did not want to fight, but after hearing Bhagavad Gita, he dovetailed his senses. One has to fight his senses. The nonsense cannot fight. The senses must be there. So, what did he do? He applied his senses to the senses of the Supreme Lord. That's all. And here it is said, Tani sarvani sanjama. You can control your senses only when you engage that senses into the service of the Lord. Tani sanjama jutta asita matpara. Matpara means unto me, in relationship with me. That's all. And in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu also you'll find that Nirbande Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagam Uchyate. You haven't got to restrain yourself completely, but if you dovetail yourself, Nirbande, when it is in relationship with Krishna, then your Vairagya, your detachment is approved. The only thing is that don't do it for your sense gratification, but do it for the satisfaction of the Supreme. That's all. That should be the motto of our life. That I shall not do anything for my sense satisfaction, but I shall do everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme. That penance, that sacrifice will make me perfect spiritualized and perfectly on the spiritual platform, and my life becomes perfect. Vasehi jasindriyani tasya prajna pratisthita. In this way, one has control. It is a simple thing. Control. Vase means under control. Vasehi jasya indriyani. Anyone who has got his senses under control, he is spiritually perfect. So how senses under control? Just engage the senses under the control or under the direction of the Supreme. Then you become perfectly spiritual. Vasehi jasya indriyani tasya prajna pratisthita. ध्यायतो विषयान पुंसा संगस्तेषु उपजायते संगात संजायते कामः कामात् क्रोध अभिजायते. Now, Vishaya, if we do not control our senses in that way, doubted with the supreme will, then what will happen? Not dhyato visayat, because our mind is always engaged in either of these things. Eating, sleeping, and defending and mating. Especially mating. So dhyato visayan pumsa. When we think of, even by thinking, the next stage is sangastesu upajayate, we become attached to that. We become attached to that. Just like we are reading some sex novel. Now sex novel, now there is thinking of that. The thinking, then I become attached to it. I want practically. The dhyato visayang pumsa sangastesu upajayate, sangat sanjayate kama. And by attachment, then my lust becomes developed. Kama krodha vijayate. And when my lust is not satisfied, then I become angry. One after another, it is coming. Krodhat bhavati sanmoha. And when I am angry, then I'm out of my control of the equilibrium of mind. Krodhat sanmoha sthiti vibhrama. Then even when I am controlled of the equilibrium of mind, we have seen that two brothers quarreling, and it rose to such an extent, the quarreling, that one brother killed his another brother. You have seen? Two brothers quarreling, one brother was killed by one brother, and he was arrested, and he was ordered to be hanged. Then his father appealed to the court that my two sons, one is already lost, so he may be spared of his life. This I have actually seen. So by the request of the father, he was sentenced to life, and his hanging was excused by the court. That I have seen. So thus see, krodha, one after another, it becomes so intensified that nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. Then siddhibhamsad buddhinasa. Buddhinasa means he lost his intelligence. He forgot that whom I am going to kill. Buddhinasa. Buddhinasat pranasati. And as soon as one loses his intelligence, then he is gone to hell. So these things are happening. And we are continuing our material life after life, and not only in human life, but in other forms of life. Should we not think that we shall stop all this nonsense for good in this life? Yes. Any sane man, any intelligent man, he should think like that this opportunity, this nice form of human life, with in civilized society, with developed consciousness, I must utilize this opportunity for my spiritual perfection, so that I may not suffer life after life this material pain. This is the determination. Otherwise, the whole thing is the controlling. How it is nice. Dhyato visayan pumsa. Thinking of sense enjoyment. Dhyato visayan pumsa sangastesu upajayate. Then I become attached to it. And if my lust is not fulfilled, then I become angry. And by anger, I forget myself. Then my intelligence is lost, and I may commit havoc. So, actually, those are serious for spiritual enlightenment of life. They should try to control the senses, not by force, by regulating, by dovetailing it in relationship with the Supreme Lord. Then my senses will be purified. Sarvapadhi vinimmakta tatparatena ninmalam rishikena rishikesa sevanam bhaktiruchyate. Senses simply senses. The Lord's name is Rishikesh. He is the proprietor of the senses. That I have already explained to you, that how he is the proprietor. I am not the proprietor. It is the senses are given to me for my enjoyment because I wanted it. Now all the senses are already there in my spiritual life. I am misusing them. Without being the senses being used in the service of the Lord, I am misusing it. Therefore I am in trouble. Now the whole process should be to change the platform, and I must use the senses in the service of the Lord. Then my life will become perfect. Ragadesha vimuktastu vishaya indriyaischaran atmavasya vidhi atma prasadam adhigacchati. If you want self-satisfaction, then you try to do this. Don't be neglectful. Ragadesha vimukta. Vishaya indriyaischaran. If you let loose your senses unrestrictedly for material enjoyment, then you cannot have that satisfaction. But if you want satisfaction, if you want real satisfaction, as I have already described, that ahitavyapatihata jayatma suprasidati. If you want satisfaction of yourself, then you must practice this devotional service. So engage your eyes, engage your ears, engage your nose. That the archan vidhi is to engage all the senses in the service of the Lord. Of course, here there is no such example, but in India there are temples. There are temples in which the Lord is so nicely decorated. There are big temples. Especially in Vrindavan, there are, where I have my headquarters, there are 5,000 temples. Out of that, about 7 or 8 temples are very prominent and they're very old. And one of the temples is my residence, Radha Damodar temple. Now, in all these temples, the deity, they are so nicely decorated. 24 hours engagement is there. And early in the morning, there will be Mangalaratri at 4 o'clock. The Lord, it is understood that Lord gets up from his sleeping. So the first there is offering of worship, which is called Mangalaratri. Now, then there is Bhogaratri. Then there is dressing of the Lord, decorating the Lord, then offering food stuff, then and so on. There are so many programs that all the devotees, they are engaged fully. They see nicely decorated. If you want artistic decoration, just apply to the Lord. See how artistically he is decorated. So that satisfies the demands of my eyes. In every temple, nice musical sound is going on. If you go there, you sit down for a time and you hear and you become satisfied. So the ear is satisfied, the eyes are satisfied. Then you take very nice, palatable, the food stuff offered to the deity, and you are offered the prasadam as remnants. So these arrangements are there. And not only in Vrindavan, in every town, still the system is going on. That means our senses, in a different way, they are engaged. They are engaged. Spiritually engaged. So that process is very good for the neophytes. Those are beginners. The archan process, the deity worship in the temple is very nice. But apart from all those engagements where it is not possible, this singing or glorifying the Supreme Lord, or this simple song, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, it will elevate certainly to the highest extent if you do it very nicely and seriously. Atmavasya vidhi atma prasadam abhigacchate. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hani vastu upajayate. And as soon as you are satisfied, then your all miseries are ended. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hani vastu upajayate. Prasanna cetasa jyasu buddhi pajya vasistate. And with satisfaction of the mind, prasanna cetasa, satisfaction of the mind, then your intelligence will be fixed up on spiritual activity. Nasti buddhi rajuktasya nachajuktasya bhavana nacha bhavayata shanti rasantasya putu sukham. If you want actually happiness, then you must apply your intelligence to this process of spiritual emancipation. Without this, nasti buddhi ajuktas, one who cannot apply his intelligence to this process, then he has no other way. And without this, nacha abhavayata shanti, if you want peace, that is also not possible. So this process must be accepted. Indriyana hi charatang janmano vibhiyate tadasya harti prajnana vayurnava ibambhasi. And if you let loose your senses unrestricted, then you cannot fix up your intelligence. Just like a boat on the river and there is wind, high wind, and at the center of the boat that is not possible to keep it restful. It is always tottering. Similarly, if you don't control our senses and dovetailing them in the service of the Lord, then always they will be disturbed, just like a boat on the a river and persuaded by the heavy wind. Vayurnavi vahammasi. Tasmat jasya mahabaha nigrihitani sarvasa indriyani indriyarthidva tasya pragya pratisthita. So, a spiritually perfect man is he who tasmat jasya maha nigrihitani sarvasa indriyani, one who has controlled his senses perfectly in this way, then he is to be understood that he is spiritually perfect. Tasmat jasya mahabaha nigrihitani sarvasa. Nigrihitani means completely restrained, not to use the senses for any other purposes except in the service of the Lord. That is called really control, really purified senses. Tasmat jasya mahabaha nigrihitani sarvasa indriyani indriyarthebhya. Indriya, the senses, shall not be let loose to act freely. It should be restricted in such a way that my senses cannot work without being engaged in the service of the Lord. That is called sense control. Indriyani indriyarthebhya tasya prajna pratisthita. Janisa sarvabhutanam tasyang jagrati sanjami jasyang jagrati bhutani sanisa pasthito mane. So therefore, there are two kinds of intelligence. One kind of intelligence is apply the senses for unrestricted enjoyment, and another kind of intelligence is to apply the senses in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So, people, now, suppose one has given up all material enjoyment, but he is engaged in the spiritual service, in the transcendental service of the Lord. So, materialists, they see what a nonsense he is, that he has given up all material enjoyment, he is now engaged in something which is vague or which is, there is no understanding whether it is right or wrong. He feels like that. So, that the materialist sees the spiritualist as sleeping in the enjoyment of life. And the spiritualist sees the materialist, the what nonsense is, that he has got the elevated conscious life of human form of life and is spoiling in the material senses and material enjoyment. He is not taking interest into spiritual life. So he sees that he is sleeping and he sees that he is sleeping. The material sees the spiritualist that he is nonsense, he is sleeping. And the spiritualist sees the materialist, the nonsense, that he is spoiling. The janisa sarvanisha sarvabhutana tasyam jagrati sangyami jasyam jagrati bhutani sanisa pasato munehe. So, this is going on. So, without taking any account how the things are going on, if you are actually serious for spiritual emancipation of life, then the process recommended in the Bhagavad Gita as practically demonstrated by Arjuna, if we follow this principle, then we shall be proceeding towards the spiritual emancipation of life undoubtedly and without fail. So the whole thing is that we have to make the best use of a bad body. The whole thing is the senses. Senses are the cause of my material misery. Now, I cannot avoid the senses in my present status of life. The best thing is that senses may be engaged in the service of the Lord, so that automatically they will be restricted and purified, and my spiritual life will be revealed, and the spiritual perfection is sure to come. Thank you very much.